Welcome to the Breathe Conversations. This series explores how people operate as responsibility, ambition, and pressure grow over time. These are not burnout stories and they're not about fixing anything. They're calm, honest conversations about awareness, capacity, and what helps performance last. Today, I'm joined by Chris. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, Katie. I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. How about we start with, for people that don't know you yet, what does life look for you right now? Who are you? Business, family, responsibilities?
All right, awesome. So, hi everyone. My name is Chris Dornan, and I'm a husband to Hazel and father to Maya, Robin, and Nula, my three little girls that keep me on my toes. I own a couple of businesses. My background, or my main focus, is property investing, property development, serviced accommodation, and asset management for supported housing, specialist supported housing. They're our main focus right now. And before that, I was in construction for 20 odd years. So very similar background to yourself, started on the tools, got to project management, started a main contracting business. That led into investing in property together with my business partner, Sen. We've been on a growth journey over the last 10 years now.
Wow.
Outside of that, I am very much an adrenaline junkie. Like extreme sports is my vice. Snowboarding, surfing, mountain biking, all those good things. Anything that scares me really is generally how I recharge.
Amazing. Love that. I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie myself. I think it just gives you a bit of a spark, doesn't it? When you're used to the day in and day out stuff, it's just something new.
It definitely,
Amazing. So,
sure, for sure.
as your business has grown, obviously you've been on this journey over the last 10 years and you've transitioned out of construction on the tools to full time in business at quite a high level now. How's the weight of responsibility changed both at work and at home? Because I can imagine it's impacted both sides.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's probably worth going back a bit further than 10 years, really. So I started my first business when I was 26. I'm 43 now. And I think one of the key things is like when starting out, you don't have that much pressure and responsibilities, really, other than looking after yourself and maybe a partner. And so it was just me and my girlfriend and my wife when I started out in business. And, as a lot of entrepreneurs will identify with and relate to, in the early days, it's just go, 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 go. It is beast mode, night and day, like wake up in the morning, go to sleep, eat, breathe, and sleep it. Um, Over the years, the different challenges that arise, in the early days, you're out just building momentum, trying to get traction, get the flywheel going and get the work in, get the projects, get the properties, get the jobs, wherever it might be, and you're just prepared to do whatever it takes to do that. And it's just huge. So like the pressure isn't quite as high. Um, as you start building momentum, that's when the pressure and the responsibilities start coming in because you start to have to employ people, build a team. For me, getting married and having kids came at the same time as reinventing my business. I moved from London, where I started it, back to Edinburgh. I had to start again, and then threw in three kids within the first 3 years of doing that. So like there was a lot of pressure and responsibility at home that came up the back. And yeah, I mean, yeah, looking back on those days, it was hard going because it was early starts, late finishes. Um, Trying to get traction within the business and look after family, be there to support my wife, be there like help out the kids and everything. And yeah, that was quite tough. Those early days are pretty hard going. But yeah, for me, like having a strong why behind doing the whole thing, knowing that like we're gonna have to put the hard yards in for a period of time, but that if we follow this path, might take a few twists and turns, but it'll ease off over time if we make the right decisions. And I think it's really important when you're doing that to spot the opportunities that might be right for you and some of the opportunities that aren't right for you. You know a little bit about my journey, but in trying to keep my feet in two camps, so had the building company, had the family, and then started adding in the property business. There was a huge amount of pressure came with that because you've got deadlines at every level, everywhere you turn. Everyone's looking to you for answers. As you grow both teams, both businesses, it gets quite difficult to really balance your time and make sure that you're allocating the right time to the right businesses. And you can only push so hard before you really start to not be as efficient as you could. And that's a key, thing that as the years progressed and you start reflecting and looking back on what's worked, what hasn't worked, you start to see, well, like ultimately family, that is the absolute be all and end all number one priority. So that's the responsibilities that you're just, in my opinion, should never be shaken. That gets prioritized over everything. But to then be able to stay on track of all the different commitments that you've agreed to within the business, that's where the pressure and the responsibility can get a little bit much if you're not careful about the things you're taking on. I think most entrepreneurs will push, 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 and they'll get those things done. They'll get everything done, but at the cost of their health, which brings us to this conversation, I guess, and making sure that you're diligent and you're choosing the right things to focus on really helps you maintain that and manage the responsibilities that you've got. But it's being very clear about which are the right things to take on was a big thing for me.
Yeah. And also, I think a common thing that I see is obviously, like you said at the start of a business, you'll go, 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 you're in beast mode. You just want to scale, you want to build, you want to grow. As you do start seeing that traction, how do you know the right time to start taking your foot off the accelerator? Because as you said, you have to be quite picky with your choices. If you say yes to everything, you end up in this big kind of mess and you do end up burnout and you do end up sacrificing your health for your family.
Yeah.
How did you know when to start taking your foot off the accelerator and that your business was at that level? Because you're so used to being in beast mode.
Yeah, I think it's weighing up what practices, what businesses and what things you do in your day-to-day life are serving you and what's not serving you. Um, like for me, and I guess you were fairly similar in the construction side of things, that served me for a period of time. It's something that I got into that because I really enjoyed making things. Being a creative, I love taking something from an idea to reality, from paper to bricks and mortar. That was a real passion and something I really enjoyed doing. But as the business grew, I knew that it wasn't the thing that was going to serve me long term. And so I already had that seed planted for me anyway. I already had that seed planted that was a stepping stone to becoming a developer and then a full time investor. As things progressed, you start to say, well, look, how many hours am I spending in each of these businesses? Which one am I getting the most enjoyment from? Which one's causing the most stress? And then weighing up, how does this align with what I want from my life? How is it aligning with the time I'm getting to spend with my kids and with my wife? Really importantly, how much time is it taking away from me being able to be me, if that makes
Yeah.
sense? Like doing the things that light me up outside of work, you know? And yeah, like you say, if you say yes to everything, it's a no to something tomorrow. And so taking time, which can be difficult in itself, actually creating like free thinking time. When you're that busy and you've got that many responsibilities, it's hard to see the light through the trees. But you have to give yourself some time to just slow down, stop, and reflect and think, okay, well, if I keep going down this path, I keep doing all of these different things. Like, how well is it serving me? Am I getting to live the life I want? Is this business something that, is giving me time for me to focus on hobbies, focus on health, focus on relationships? And if it's not, then it's spotting the things that aren't serving you anymore and thinking, how can I start to phase them out? Like, you can't just drop them dead. Most things you can't just
Yeah.
drop dead there and then the minute you decide it's not serving you. So you've got to have a progression plan for how you're going to be able to move out of that. And that could take a little bit of time. But knowing what's important to you, understanding your why, and really having quite a deep connection to your purpose was a big thing for me. I still love creative things. I still love construction to an extent, but not in the guise that it used to be. I still love
Yeah.
property, the people element of property. That's one of the big draws for me into property. But knowing that those cold days on sites, managing multiple projects, dealing with dozens of trades every day, that just wasn't something I wanted to continue doing late into my 40s and 50s. And knowing that it wasn't necessarily going to be the thing that was going to take me to the next stage. And it's only really by reflecting on those things, looking at, like where are we getting the best results, that you can start to then reduce. Reading a really good book at the minute called The One Thing. And it's all about finding that one thing that you're uniquely good at, that you really enjoy doing, that there's a need for in the market, that is going to help, your customers, your guests, whoever it might be. Um, Really just zoning in on that thing and cutting out all the other noisy things that you might be doing that, they've got you to where you are, but they're not necessarily going to take you to that next level. And so
Yeah.
that was a biggie. Sort of starting to do that reflection process more diligently and actively looking for the things that aren't serving you anymore. Looking for the things that are causing you maybe more stress than you want, or the things that you maybe once enjoyed, but you just don't want to continue doing for, extended timelines. And that kind of helps because you can then replace those behaviors with more positive ones. A big one is understanding, what is your top of the task triangle. You know, if you understand the things in your business is it's going to really, give you fulfillment, give you a sense of job satisfaction and help move the needle forward, then you can start to think, okay, well, look, I need to focus on these, this and this. But that means that to do them efficiently, I can't be doing all these other things. And then you start to think, okay, do I need to delegate it or do I need to just delete it and drop it from my daily task list?
Yeah, I like that, delegate or delete. I'm very much in a situation where I am starting to prioritize things, and I took on things when they were kind of needs and musts, and again, I enjoyed them at the time, but it's like, how well do they serve me now? Where do
Yeah.
I want to go in my business? How do I level up? And in order to level up, I've got to let some things go.
Yeah.
And again, with the construction side, I was very much the same. Like, I really enjoyed being on the tools as an electrician. I very much like had an eye for detail, which I think a lot of things in that world you need to have that eye for detail, and it's really enjoyable seeing that end product. But again, the colder days were coming, the negative energy on site is real. And that was something that I found really difficult to be around after being around people like Property Entrepreneur or Property Investors Network. You're
Yeah.
around positive people who want to help you all the time, and then you go to site and it's just
Very,
negative energy all the time, and
really.
everyone hates their job, everyone hates their life, and it's like, God, I need to get out of here. Like, this isn't what I'm working towards. They say you're like the top 5 people you hang around, don't they? And I didn't want to become like them.
Well, there's a transition period as well, though, isn't there? Like, because you mentioned you need to must. You've got to do what you got to do to put food on the table. And
Yeah.
when you're in startup mode, like even if you're doing things you don't enjoy, it might be something that you did once enjoy, but you still need to do it for a period of time until you gradually replace that. Like for me and with yourself, like that's property. Property's been able to do that for us, but it doesn't happen overnight. And actually knowing the tipping point of when you can drop off certain things that's key because you can't just be reckless and say, "Oh, I don't like this anymore. I'm just going to stop doing it." That's
Yeah.
unfortunately not how the world works. You do have to still push through, and a lot of the stuff we do is mundane and boring. But it allows us to have a lifestyle that we're looking for, or it gives us the opportunity to do the things that we do like to do. But
Yeah.
it's not when at your point in time that's going to be the right time to drop off certain things, and a lot of it can be financially driven.
Definitely. And I think the other side of that as well is that although you have to do it at that moment, knowing that you have an exit plan makes it a lot easier to keep doing because you know you're working towards leaving. So
Yeah.
it actually does make it a little bit easier to turn up. And I remember my last few weeks on site, I knew I was getting towards the end of being on site and I didn't hate it at all. I was just kind of turning up, doing my job, having a laugh, and everyone else was just in such a sad kind of state of mind because they know that they have to go back week on week because they don't have any plans, and I'm there like, I'm choosing to be here and I'm also going to leave soon, and this is a great feeling.
I think that's a really, really good point there, and actually like it's something that everybody should carry, no matter whether you're an employee or you're an employer, whatever your work situation is like you need to have a progression plan, having a progression plan and like having a vision of what you want out of life going forward. You know, everything's a step, like with me, my main contracting business was a stepping stone. Doing rent to rent was a stepping stone. Like all these things are stepping stones to the next level, to the next level. And, being diligent about what that progression plan is and setting that clear vision, keeping it front of mind and being really, committed to the cause, understanding what you're doing it all for. For me, it was about buying back my time so I could spend it with my family. I could travel. I love traveling. I love seeing the world and I love like sports. So I want to be able to do that stuff and share those experiences with my kids. And that was just my drive and why. One of my silly whys that you'll get with being, having spent time on site. I wanted to walk my kids to school you know, like prissy dad's in the playground, right? So like a lot of the time it's mum's in the playground. And I wanted to be the dad in the playground that gets to walk his kids to school. And so like that was just a silly little personal goal for me. And I achieved it. And it was a great feeling to say, yeah, I can walk to my kids to school whenever I want that. I can pick them up
Yeah.
whenever I want. That's a really nice feeling because they are my driving why. And so like, taking time to really, have that vision will help you because then it doesn't feel like a chore. Like you could have been miserable on site. I was the same. There's been times in the property business where I'm like, what am I doing that for? Why are we doing this? Like that's just business, isn't it? Uh,
Yeah.
actually, holding on to that and thinking, right, yeah, I know why I'm doing this. when you are in that valley, you are like having a bit of a tough day or week or month, whatever it might be, you know that, okay, this is temporary, this will pass,
Yeah.
and I'm on the right track for my future that I'm looking for.
Absolutely. And I think that if you really like go deep into it and look at businesses that haven't succeeded, generally it's because people were only financially driven or motivated and they didn't have like a really strong reason why. And I think it's part of the reason that like when even when business is bad, we've stuck with it. We haven't just given up. Is because we have strong reason whys and we want more for our lives. And I think that is a massive, massive part of business. And I genuinely don't think that you could build a business if you don't have a good reason why, because it is hard. People think it's easy and everyone will call you lucky. But behind the scenes, it is really, really tough. And yeah,
Yeah.
we choose this life, but we choose it because we have those reasons.
Yeah. And it is a choice, right? I mean, like being an entrepreneur is not the easiest path in life. Let's face it. Like, you know, if you can persevere through the first few years and, you know, and figure out your system, figure out how to actually run the business and create something that really supports the lifestyle you want, you know, it is really, really rewarding, you know, and in the
Yeah,
world that we're in now, I mean, obviously it depends what kind of business you're in, but there's so much flexibility. You've got worldwide access to team members that it could be so much better than you might have in your local pool, you know, wherever you live. It's just, you know, understanding how to structure things can really give you that sense of satisfaction, just continuing to grow it. But you do have to be prepared that there's going to be tough times and you have to push through. And the important people in your life need to know that as well, you know, because
yeah,
it's be a collective decision. You know, if you're going down the entrepreneurial path, you know, you're going to have to push harder than you would do potentially in a day job, you know, because
yeah.
all that responsibility is for you.
Definitely. And obviously, you've gone through a lot of different motions of business. You've gone through the scaling part, you've gone through the kind of like perfecting part. Have you ever gone through a period where you've realized that you were maybe running on empty? You maybe didn't call it burnout at the time, you maybe didn't recognize the signs of the symptoms, but was there a period where you've been through that?
Oh yeah, very much. I think everybody else around me could see it, but me. To be honest, yeah. It was a transition period between, you know, I think our property business had been going about 4 years, 5 years. I already had wheels in motion to shut down my building company. In hindsight, looking back, I should have sold it at that point because we still had lots of projects, and it was all good, very well. We were into high growth. Um, but I was just burning the candle at both ends too much. I was pushing like far too early starts, far too late finishes. You know, every night of the week I was working till, you know, midnight, 1 o'clock. But I was up again at 5, and I was just sacrificing my health and my sleep. I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't doing the sports I love. I wasn't getting the time I needed and wanted with my family. And, you know, I didn't see it coming, but it was like death by a thousand cuts. You know, the consistent lack of sleep, the consistent time away from family, the consistent lack of training, it all led to, you know, well, how it crystallized for me was like really, really bad insomnia, which I still haven't been able to resolve fully yet. And that started about 4 years ago, 2022.
Wow.
And that was at the point where I just finished shutting everything down with the building company, was able to go all in with the property side of things, but we still had lots of different focuses and lots of different plates spinning. Um, and I'm someone who's very much, you know, I live by my morals and I live in integrity, and I will not let people down. And if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it, even at my detriment, you know, as most of us are, you know, like we'll all stand
Yeah.
by it, push through because, you know, our reputation is everything in business. And, you know, you'll just push through and get these things done because you think you can. Like for me, I could do that quite comfortably in my 20s and it didn't phase me. Even in my 30s, I could do it. Like now, the thought of going back and working the way I used to now scares the life out of me because I'm so much more aware of like what burnout actually is. Like, you know, I'd heard the word burnout being bandied around, but I never really thought of anything of it. Certainly didn't think it was ever going to be affecting me because, you know, in my head, I was superhuman. I could, you know, I could run through walls. I could do anything I wanted to. You know, if I had something that I was trying to achieve, I would pull out all the stops to achieve it. But what I realized a few years ago was that actually, like, yes, okay, you can do that, but at what long term cost? I saw an interesting post the other day about a guy on a motocross bike when he was 12. And the caption was that my 12-year-old me never anticipated a 50-year-old me. I thought that just grabbed my attention because when we're in our sort of 20s and 30s, you don't see you don't ever think about it. Oh, how am I going to, if I keep doing this, how am I going to feel when I'm 40 or 50? I don't want to be that burnt out old man with gray hair that can't walk straight, I can't stand up straight. And okay, I've got the gray hair and I've had the burnout, but I can still walk straight, actually. Actually, like it does tend to be a death by a thousand cuts. It's not something that just happens overnight. It's something that, will be building up, building up, building up. Understanding the effects of cortisol in your body, like how that affects your sleep, how that affects your recovery, and how just your overall health and well-being. Mental health as well is a big one, like burnout can really catch you out with your mental health. um, Feeling like you can lose purpose, you can't see, like you can't think straight, you've got brain fog, all those things that they're real things, and we're probably all guilty of hearing of other people going through these experiences, thinking it's never going to happen to us until it does. And like you're a little bit familiar with my journey, but like I've been on this path for the last 2 years, really trying to reset the balance. Um, the sleep's been the hardest one to get under control, if I'm honest. And I think that's just years of programming. That's going to take probably years of unwinding that programming. But, one of the big things that really helped me, come back from that, because I had some really dark moments, the last couple of years that I didn't see coming. Not some depression was never something that I'd ever experienced, but then thankfully for me, it was only like very, very short bouts. But in those moments, it was quite tough, and you feel like you have lost purpose, you have lost focus. What does it all mean? You start questioning everything. And I guess the thing that made a difference for me was actually being pushed to really focus on health, get back in the
Yeah.
gym, get back training, look at your nutrition, look at the rest that you're taking more holidays, simple things that we all know we all
Yeah.
want to do. Sacrifice it when you're in growth mode. And actually getting back to the things I talked about at the beginning, I committed to, right, my reset button was going surfing every Friday afternoon. And
Nice.
it seems like something small, but that one thing was just me committing to focusing on me rather than the business and the family and everything, which are all important things you need to do. But equally important, you've got to look after the golden goose and that recharge you, the things that reset you and allow you just to feel good in yourself. Those things just cannot be sacrificed. And, that would be my one, if I was to give anyone advice, like that's coming up in business or, no matter what stage you're at, is find something that you just really enjoy doing just for you, nobody else, just for you, and hold on to that. Don't let it go because it's really
Yeah.
important. Um,
Well, the best gift that you can give anyone is actually the best version of you, because no one wants to be around you if you're in a bad way, if you're miserable, if you are depressed, if you're burnt out. It's not a fun person to be around, and you do get that energy off other people as well.
yeah,
You mentioned a couple of things through that I wanted to touch on. The first was that you mentioned you've had some low states in the last couple of years, but luckily they were shorter than what some people go through. Would you put that down to being aware and being in the right environments that you were able to get yourself out of those kind of holes? Because I think that if you're not in the right environments, obviously it's quite easy to spiral. Would
oh
you
yeah,
say that that's part of the reason that you've got?
definitely. I mean, you said it earlier on. Like the five people you choose to spend the most time with you'll become the average of those five people. And I think that translates or transcends past physical people that you're around, but it also relates to what you let into your mind. Things like social media, things like news, YouTube,
Mm.
all those things. If you let all the negativity going on in the world consume your thoughts, or even just letting those thoughts into your mind, that does not help with any kind of spiraling that you might be, because you could be on the edge with things. You might be tired, you might be like burnt out. You start letting those things in. Like for me, I realized that I think they might actually be a big trigger on how I was feeling. So I'm thinking about, what does the future look like? How does when you're looking at the wider economy, what government's doing to property, all that stuff, you start letting all these thoughts in and you think, I can't see the future
Yeah.
anymore. And actually a big reset for me was going back to practicing gratitude. Cause like it got to the point, it's like, you ever heard the saying, you're either a radiator or a drain. You kind of touched on it with the energy you put out in the world.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to be that radiator. I always want to inspire people, lift people up. Like you never want to be the person that is a drain in a conversation that's coming across negative. Yeah. And we can't always feel like that. But doing little daily practices to make sure that the thoughts we're thinking about, the words that we're using are taking us in the right direction rather than the wrong direction. Because thoughts become words, words become reality. you know?
Yeah.
And so important to be very careful about what you let into your mind, the conversations you have. And, if you are around people that are maybe pulling you down a little bit or having those negative conversations, maybe you just need to distance yourself a little bit or just don't get involved in them and make sure that you keep your mind right. But a big one is just like thinking about like if you actually took every day, you try and think of three different things that you're grateful for that day, that week, that month. It's amazing how many things we can be grateful for that really completely shift our mindset, shift how we show up, shift our body language. But that's a conscious decision. Is gratitude, practicing things. I know that some people will think that sounds a bit woo-woo, but like it's real. Like gratitude's a real thing. It's very hard to be
Yeah.
negative when you're actively practicing gratitude for things that are good in your life. No matter what's going
Well,
on, there's something good.
it's scientifically proven that practicing daily gratitude does rewire how your brain thinks and functions.
Well,
So it isn't. I get that. I mean, I was one of those people that was like gratitude, like whatever. Like, but when you start doing it, you're like, this actually
does work.
works. You actually feel really good. I usually do like one in the morning, one in the evening. Obviously, if I'm having a really good day, there'll be a list of 10. But if I'm having a really bad day, just one thing can change the entire course of your day,
Yeah.
and it is completely game changing. And it's also makes you think that I think when stuff does happen that's bad, like I'll give an example. Last Monday, first thing that I did in the morning was I overspilt my water in the little water machine thing, went everywhere. And then about 5 minutes after that, I spilled coffee everywhere and everything was just going wrong. And then I was late to the meeting. But because I was in a positive mindset, I just found it funny. But I can
Yeah.
imagine how easily that would have tipped me over the edge 3 years ago when I wasn't in a good spell. Like
Yeah.
it makes a massive, massive difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, another thing that you mentioned previously was obviously taking time for yourself and taking more holidays. I think that's one of the things that we forget in business is that when you work for someone else, you're forced to take holiday. You have to take your day's holiday, 20, 25 days, whatever it is through the year. When you work for yourself, me and my brother, we didn't go on holiday for years just because we were so focused on the business and making sure that it functioned. And all of a sudden we were like, oh my God, we haven't gone on holiday in ages. Like we really need to do something. So that
Yeah.
was a point I picked up as well, which was a good one.
It's really important. It's Dan Hill say, like time off is a requirement, not a luxury. Like, and you'll hear that done about a lot. Couldn't Truer words could not be spoken. It really is because that's what we're doing it all for. In the end of the day, if you don't have people around you that you want to spend time with, like all the success in the world doesn't mean anything. It's hollow, isn't it? Unless
Yeah.
you can share it with people and you can actually go and enjoy your life. Building the business is quite a lot of fun. When you've got vision and you're creating something from scratch, there's a lot of satisfaction comes from that and it's a buzz, you get real energy off that. Um, but you have to be careful that you do still take time to just tap out and just, you can't spend all your time. Well, you can if you want, but like it'll lose its edge if you keep going for too long without taking time off.
Yeah. It's the compound effect, isn't it? The compound effect can work very positively, but it can also work very negatively.
It's also the reward loop, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that, one of the thing I think most entrepreneurs are guilty of, certainly I am, is not rewarding yourself. And actually, just go on a little holiday, even if it's just a weekend. It's just a reset. It's a little reward for the hard work, and it's just something to remind yourself why you're doing it. And
Yeah.
it definitely keeps you. Like for me, that was surfing. Right, if I hit my targets this week, I'm going surfing on Friday afternoon. Didn't hit my targets, I wouldn't let myself go, but that forced me to hit my targets. But
Yeah.
do it in a way that I've set my boundaries. I'm not sacrificing time with the family. That time is evergreen. It's in the calendar and it's blocked out. So like that doesn't change. Then that forces me to be efficient during my days because I know that come 1 o'clock on Friday, Adam coined it really well, one and done. That was me, one and done on a Friday, finished up my mentoring calls with my coaching clients, shut down for the day, go surfing. And that's my reward because I've hit my targets for the week, and
Yeah.
I think every entrepreneur out there should have some version of that that gives them that reward sensor in their
Yeah.
brain, releases that dopamine, gives them a sense of achievement, and it keeps you on point. But it means that you're committing to and you're making it as much of a priority as everything else.
Yeah, I love that. Mine at the moment is I recently signed up to Vitality so that I could get 50% off the gym that I wanted to join. Cheaper to have health insurance and join the gym with Vitality than it is just to join the gym. It's nuts. But obviously, if I go to the gym the amount of days that I go in the week, which is 3 times for strength and conditioning and 3 times for Muay Thai, you get the points, and if you get the points, you get a free coffee every week.
That's
So
right.
my little reward is on a Friday morning, I go and get my free coffee, and it's like something as small as that, and I get
Yeah.
so excited to go for my little drive and grab my coffee, and it just makes such a difference having that reward. It doesn't have to be anything massive. People often mistake a reward for, like, a huge holiday or going skiing or buying themselves a Lamborghini, and it's like, just go get yourself a coffee if that's what
Mm.
you like.
Yeah.
Like, just do something that you like.
That's it. It could be a walk in the country, a walk on the beach, a coffee, like just, yeah, whatever it is, just some reset just to give you that
Yeah.
reward.
100%. Is there anything you've touched on it a couple of times through, like, your health and your fitness and the gym, your nutrition? Is there anything that's, like, non-negotiable now in your week that you have to do to keep steady, that manages your energy?
Yeah. So yeah, from a health perspective, so I've already said like with family, I've got my committed time in there. That they are my big rocks. When you're thinking about the jar of sand rocks analogy, my big rocks are my family time. And then I fit everything else around that. But yeah, from a health perspective, yeah, I'm the same as you. 3 strength and conditioning sessions a week. I play basketball on a Wednesday, and I either go for a run or I go surfing. And that's my week. I would sometimes swap out surfing with mountain biking, depending on how cold it is in Scotland. But yeah, they're my non-negotiables, like the fitness and nutrition as well. I've set boundaries around sleep. So even though sleep's still a bit touch and go, I go to bed at the same time every night. I'm pretty disciplined with my evening routines. I'm pretty disciplined with my morning routines. Like those things just don't change. Like morning routine's been a massive one. Like I dipped in and out of that for years, but just having that morning routine where I get up, I sort my kids out, I give them their breakfast, I get to have a bit of conversation with them, a bit of a laugh with them, get them ready for school, and then I either take them to school or my wife does, and then I'll go to the gym depending on what day it is. And those things have been massive. Like, and I just won't unless I'm away traveling for whatever reason. Those things just do not get sacrificed because without being healthy, without having a strong body, we're not going to have a strong mind. If like yeah, right, like if you're burning the candles both ends, you're not getting your sleep, you're not getting enough exercise, you just don't have the energy. Like, and it might not be something overnight, but over time, your energy really dips off. So for me, yeah, the gym and the sports that I love doing and the family time, they're absolute non-negotiables. And yeah, they've been a massive transition from going from feeling very burnt out and having some low points to yeah, like the world's good. They've got so much opportunity and so many things to be positive and grateful for that. Like we're got the privilege to be designing our lives, to be in this
Yeah.
position of design the business that we want and what we want our lifestyle to look like, who we want to be spending our time with. Can to come and spend time with people like yourself and all the other guys at PE on a once a month. That's a nice monthly ritual for me. It's
Yeah.
there are other things that I take a lot from and very grateful for, and being able to do those things just keeps you on point and it keeps your energy high. So when you do need to go into beast mode and you do need to be pushing the limits a little bit on the professional front, you've got the energy and the drive and the motivation to go and do it.
Yeah, and then you always have a bit of a recovery period afterwards, and a good point that you mentioned there is, like, the productivity when you're burnt out, a task that should take you an hour could take you 4. So if you
Yeah.
just actually stayed in bed for a couple more hours, you'll get it done quicker and you won't sacrifice any extra time. And that's what people really struggle to understand is if you prioritize your sleep and your rest and your recovery, you'll be more productive, which means tasks won't take as long. So you don't need as much time to do them. So you
No.
can spend that extra hour in bed. And that's okay. And I don't understand how people really struggle to see that. But I guess because I've been in the position where I've been in the point where I'm taking longer to do tasks because I'm so tired, I guess it's easier for me to see now and obviously with my condition. But it just baffles me that people think that you'll be more productive if you're running on fumes. And it's your car isn't going to run very well on minimum petrol and bad oil. So
Yeah,
why would
exactly.
you?
And it's that age old myth. Like, I remember, even as recently as like 10 years ago, the mentality was, like not sleeping was a badge of honor. Like I've gone 2 nights this week, I haven't slept, or I worked right through the night last night. It's when I used to do shop fitting back in London, that was it. 48-hour shifts were the common thing, but then you're
Yeah.
absolutely wrecked for the next couple of days after. And I just realized that, even things like, what do you actually do in the like how much Netflix are you sitting watching? Like when you could
Yeah.
actually just go to bed and get some extra sleep, bank that extra hour, you're going to feel a million times better the next day. For what? Okay, yeah, we all need time to relax and switch off and wind down. And I'm not saying anything negative about Netflix. I still love Netflix, but like shut it off at 9:30 and get to bed for 10. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to go at 7 a.m. or so 7 p.m. And getting up at 5 or 6 to be productive. You could go to
Yeah.
bed at 10, up at 6, you're still getting your 8 hours, and you're still getting up and being, you're still got your whole day. You can be productive. You can have a good morning routine, and you can start your day early enough to really be productive. But you still get your 8 hours.
Yeah. And interestingly, like you mentioned with Netflix, we've me and Jono, since we've moved in together, we've actually stopped watching TV in the weekday evenings because we just get sucked into it and we find it really hard to turn it off. Like I find it much easier to put my phone down or a book down than I do to turn the TV off because especially if it's a series, I'm like, oh, I want to know what happens next. So
Yeah.
we don't watch TV in the week anymore. We've been sleeping so much better, but it
Yeah.
saves it for the weekend as well, and it just becomes more enjoyable when you do watch it and you do spend that time just kind of lazing around not doing anything because you don't
Yeah.
feel guilty because you've done it all week as well. Another point as well is obviously now you've got kids, I guess a lot of this stuff comes to modeling a healthy work life and work habits for your kids. Is that something that you have found yourself wanting to do more?
Big time. Big time. Yeah, I used to get the old singers from the kids like, "Daddy, you just work all the time. Daddy, like, are you ever going to stop working?" And even from when they were really, really young. And I remember one of them said, "Daddy, I think your superpower is working." And it's like, in one breath, that's pretty cool, but in one breath, that's really sad. It's like that's all they see me doing is working. They just associate daddy with working. And like a big part, I grew up seeing my dad work incredibly hard to provide for us and, doing whatever it took to, give us a good lifestyle. And he did that. He did it very well. And, that I think installed a very strong work ethic in me and my brothers. But it's very hard it's very easy to let that, push too far. Especially when you take too many opportunities. So like with the kids, I wanted, and I still want them to understand the value of hard work, but I also want them to know about working smart and not about burning the candle at both ends. Or, like it's important that they see you do have to work. If you want anything meaningful in life, you have to work really hard for it. So you have to work really hard for it. And if you don't do that, it's going to be hard to get the momentum. But you have to be very disciplined and strategic about the work you're doing. So now, like I try and teach them, coach them about, they're all pretty young. My twins are 9 and my eldest just turned 12. So they're kind of not really at that stage yet. But I think it's important for them to see that I'm putting boundaries in place that is making sure that I'm getting that time with them. And I'm not just waking up at 6 in the morning, going straight to the office and, they see me
Yeah.
for glass or, like that's really important to me because how we model ourselves will be, how they end up showing up as they move into adult life and adulthood.
Yeah.
Um, Being a good example that shows, you do have to have a strong work ethic. You do have to push hard when you need to, but it's also important to take time for yourself. I think that's really important to try and get that message across so they understand both sides of the scale.
Absolutely. And I love that. I think that it's something that so many families don't get to spend time with their kids now because obviously the cost of living, we don't have a wage that actually supports a family. So both parents have to work, which society was never designed that way in the
No.
first place. It costs more to have a babysitter than it does to go and get paid. So you may as well be a stay-at-home mum, but then you're trying to provide on one wage. It's
Wow.
such a difficult world out there, and that is one of the benefits of entrepreneurship is you can support a little bit more. If you could speak to the version of yourself who was in that high pressure period when your kids were saying that your superpowers work, what would you tell him now that you're where you are?
Great question. Life's a marathon, not a sprint, springs to mind. Um, yeah, my mentality was just like, I'm in sprint mode. I'm going to outwork everyone. I'm in beast mode, that was the mentality. Um, and I think being able to get across, look, if you want to be in this game for the long haul, you have to take time for yourself. You have to be strategic about what you're taking on and what you're not. And I think having a decision criteria for what opportunities you choose to engage with, that was a kind of bit of an eye opener. We applied that in one of our mastermind days to a property deal that one of our guys was looking at. But it struck a chord with me while as I was talking him through this, or as me and Sen were talking him through this on the day. I was like, this should apply to your life. That very day I went away and created metrics and it just for different things. But actually, like having a decision process to decide what you choose to take on and what you don't, and really sizing up the iceberg, because we can all get excited by opportunities that come across our plate. And that was very much me. It was like, I can't turn down this opportunity because what if another one doesn't come along? What if I'm subconsciously putting a message out to the universe that I don't need these opportunities? Like that was the kind of mindset. Like I have to take on this project or this property or this job because I don't know if another one will come along. And we you can't ignore that. That's part of being in startup mode. But you need to know that you do need to put boundaries in place early so that you don't overcommit. You don't end up in a situation where you've got more commitments than you can handle. And no matter how good you are at spinning plates, you're going to end up letting somebody down somewhere. And if you manage to not let anybody else down, you're going to let yourself down because you're going to be sacrificing so much of yourself, who you are to your significant other or to your kids or whoever it might be, that it's going to actually detract from the results you're aiming for in the first place. And so I remember my wife saying once to me about probably 15 years ago now, maybe a little less, you ever think maybe if you slowed down, you might go faster? Everyone's heard that, right? But you don't really take it on board until you have to. And, like if I'd paid more attention to that back when she first said that to me, I might have been more disciplined in all the opportunities I took on. I might have been able to enjoy that stage of the journey a little bit more. Having two companies in really aggressive growth mode, quite full on when you don't have a massive team in the background to support you doing it.
Mm.
And so I think that would be my key sentiment would be life is a marathon, not a sprint. Find respectful boundaries for yourself so that you can really go the long distance.
I love that. That was a very good analogy. And it's something that I think we often need to be reminded about because we just get so wrapped up in stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
Just to wrap things up, what is one small change that someone under pressure could make this week that would genuinely help who may be listening?
One small change. I would say take time to review, if you haven't come across it before, your wheel of life and look at what areas of your life are not getting the right amount of attention because of commitments that you've taken on. For me, that was my relationship with my wife. Like, we never had any big issues, but it just wasn't getting the time that it needed to continue to flourish. We've been together 24 years. And, after that time, it's more important than ever to really focus the time with each other. So for me, that was a big one. And health. And I think taking time to review that wheel of life, I don't know if you may post a link in the show notes or anything, but just to see, like there'll be certain areas of your life that are going really, really well. Hopefully that's professional. Hopefully it's health and relationships too. But there will be one or two areas that you're neglecting on the chase for professional successes or whatever it might be for you. And I think take the time, doesn't take long to do, to just identify what areas you might be letting slip or what areas need a bit more attention and focus, and just take baby steps to start putting more time into those things. That is what ultimately allows us to work towards whole life mastery and be able to just really enjoy the life that we're living. We only get one crack at it. And while we feel like, we've got to go, 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 go every day from the minute we wake up, we actually don't. And the more you can focus on all the aspects of life, everything becomes more enjoyable. You'll feel more of a sense of purpose in what you do and you'll get more fulfillment out of it. And ultimately it will lead to you be more successful in every area of life. So that'd be, I guess, one takeaway. If people could do that, do not let your health slip. Don't let your relationships slip. They're the two things that tend to go when you're growing a business. If you can focus on those two things, they'll really serve you well and put some boundaries in place that allows you to gradually put more time into the things that you might be neglecting.
Yeah, and that wheel of life can be quite eye-opening. I think that you have to do it like at least yearly. Things are always changing, and that's the beauty of life is you will start prioritizing different things each year as success changes and life changes and you go through different stages. But real eye-opening when I did that wheel of life and realized which parts of my life I wasn't quite happy with, but I'd forgotten about because it hadn't been brought to my attention.
Yeah, and old habits die hard, right? So like this is the thing. You're not gonna necessarily be able to fix these things overnight. but just having an awareness of it, you might already be aware of it, but when you actually score yourself, 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 on how happy you are with these areas of your life, that puts pen to paper and it brings real awareness to it. And, it's very easy to see that, like, if I keep neglecting this, it's only going to go one direction. You keep neglecting your relationship, it's probably going to end up in a breakup or a divorce. If you keep neglecting your health, one day you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke, or you're not going to be able to play with your kids or your grandkids or whatever it might be. And so taking time that, it could be you're neglecting the finance side of your business, for example. Like, if you keep neglecting the finance side of your business, guess what? You're heading for ruin. So whatever it is, take time to spot it now and take baby steps towards repairing it or building on it, giving it the attention it needs, so that over time you can get that floor up to where you want it to be.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your perspective so openly. Conversations like this exist to normalize experiences that many people go through quietly and alone as life and responsibility grow. If anything we've spoken about feels familiar, that doesn't mean that something is wrong. It just means that you're paying attention. You can find more conversations like this through Breathe. And if you want to understand how you're currently operating, you can take the Breathe scorecard at www.breatheblueprint.com. And Chris, if anyone wants to reach out to you, how can they get hold of you?
Amazing. Well, firstly, thanks for having me, Katie. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope it's been useful and given your audience some insights. So the best way to contact me would be Instagram, Chris Dornan 2, or on Facebook, Chris Dornan 127. That'd be the best place to reach out.
Amazing.
I'd love to speak to anyone. If I can help anyone in any way, that'd be an absolute pleasure to do so.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers, Katie. Thank you.